Good morning, everyone. My name is Kathy Allen, and I'm going to be doing your field service training today. As panelists today, we have Jay Spencer and Ed Reese. In this training, we're going to learn how to understand the field service menu, and this training, along with the admin level field service training, will give you the information you need to begin using the field service program. I'm going to try to stick to the agenda as closely as possible and save the questions and answers for that portion of the training. During the webinar, you can either raise your hand by clicking the hand icon on your panel, or you can type your question under the questions option. If we can't get to your answer pretty quickly, just email me at callen@ebs-next.com and put field service training in the subject, and I'll get back with you on those as soon as I can. Also, if you have any questions that are very specific to your company and won't benefit the other attendees, please email those to me as well. I think we've got everybody signed in that was registered, so we'll go ahead and get started. The first thing that I want to talk about is the field service programs based on the use of the dispatcher themselves. So I'm going to log in as a dispatcher so that I can enter some service calls. When you go to Service and Dispatch Central, this is where your dispatcher will initially enter the calls, the regular service calls, but can also set up PM dispatches from these screens as well. I go ahead and put in my contact name and my customer and my ship to. I'm going to say that this customer is calling me about his yard truck. You can select the equipment from the list, or if you are set up to do so, you can manually enter the equipment information. A couple of the things in the screen that the dispatcher can do are they can open work orders right away, or they can log a service call, and they can open a work order later when they've done the dispatch and when a service technician has called in for a work order. Again, depending on your policies and how you have it set up, you can set it up where dispatchers can open work orders, service managers, things like that. We do have some customers where their actual field techs open work orders. You have all of those capabilities if you want to set them up that way in the dispatch screens or in the field service menu as well. In this instance, as a dispatcher, I'm just going to log this call. And again, I can add this to dispatch, or I can go ahead and open a work order now. Or if I already have a work order open for this truck, for this service situation, I can choose work orders open, and I can enter a work order number that's already open to that unit. In this case, I'm just going to add this to dispatch. At this time, I can choose whether the priority on this call is high, medium, low, none, or a PM. This is an oil leak, so I'm going to choose high. And I can also choose from this screen whether to make this a field work order, a shop work order, or a PM work order. Okay, if you guys don't mind, we're going to pick up here in just a minute. We've got some people having trouble with their audio connection. So we're going to get that straightened out here real quickly, and then I'll start back up.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, I think we have our audio problem straightened out. If any of you can't hear the audio feed now, please let us know. Raise your hand so that we can see if we need to send you an audio pin. We think we just got it straightened out, so.
That's like Jeff Jerry. That's Jeff. Okay.
Well, that's what I was saying. My attendee list is gone. You guys are listening.
Hi, Jeff. Can you hear us okay?
Unmute him.
Hi, Jeff. Can you hear us okay?
Unmute him over there. He did.
Okay. It looks like we've got most of the audio issue taken care of. If anybody still can't hear us, if you'll raise your hand, we'll make sure that we'll get taken care of. If you can't hear us.
If you can't hear us, please raise your hand. We think we have the audio corrected, but want to make sure before we continue on. Okay, it looks like everybody's able to hear now, so I'm going to go ahead and start from the beginning now that hopefully we have our audio issues resolved. Today in the field service training, we're going to learn how to use the field service menus. And in the admin level training, we are going to talk about how to set all of that up. During this training, I'm going to try to follow the agenda pretty closely, and we'll save the questions and answers for the question and answer portions of the training. If you have a question, you can either raise your hand or you can click by clicking the hand icon on the attendee panel, or you can type in your questions in your question section. If we can't answer your question pretty quickly, you can email me at callen@ebs-next.com and put field service training in the subject, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Also, if you have any questions that are very specific to your company and they won't benefit the other attendees, please email those to me as well, and I'll get you an answer as soon as I can. That's okay. So the first thing I want to talk about is the program from the point of view of the dispatcher. So I'm going to log in as a dispatcher. And what I can do as a dispatcher is go into Dispatch Central, and I can enter the service call as I'm taking it, put in my contact name, customer, and ship to or job location. When you get to the unit ID, you can select from the list. This is based on your MKPOP file or your marketing file that has the customer equipment in it. Again, you can select from that list, or if you're set up to do so, you can enter the truck information manually. Then you can enter the description of the service call. Okay, as a dispatcher, you have a few different things that you can do from this screen. You can start a call out based on waiting on tech or however you have your billing references set up. We've discussed that a little bit in some prior trainings, and we're going to discuss that again in some future trainings. At this point, I can go ahead and just add the dispatch to give that call to a field service tech later when he calls in, or I can open a work order at this time and add it. Or if I already have a work order open to this unit for the same problem, I can say work order is already open and I can enter that information. In this scenario, I'm just going to enter a service call and wait for the tech to call in for another job. At that point, if you want to assign a technician, you can, or you can assign it later when you give the call to the technician. You can give the call a priority as far as how quick of a poor priority this is to get to. Since I have an oil leak, I'm going to leave this on high. And you can also choose whether it's going to be a field work order, a shop work order, or a PM work order. At this point, I'm going to leave this as a field work order and go ahead and log the call. Okay, as the dispatcher, when I go to dispatch log, I can see all of the calls that are currently in the system, whether they have work orders open to them or not, that are in dispatch but have not yet been completed. You'll notice on the left-hand side under the mechanic column that I actually, as a dispatcher, can see calls that are logged to multiple mechanics. As a mechanic, I can be set up where I can only see my own calls and anything that hasn't been assigned to someone, and we're going to cover that here shortly. From the dispatcher point of view, though, I know that I just logged this service call for Arctic Refrigeration for their yard truck. A couple of things you can do from this screen. If you need to edit the call, maybe the customer calls back in with more information, you can open the call up, add any information necessary from this screen. The other thing that you can do is when the technician calls in for the service call, from this screen, at that time is when I can open the work order, assign a tech, and change the billing reference. So in my case, I'm going to say that my technician has called in and I'm giving them this service call. So in order to do that, what I'll do is I will open the work order, and I'm going to go ahead and assign it to the tech that called in for the call. And at this time, I can also say in my billing reference, again, depending on how these are set up, I'm going to choose tech on site because I know that he's there now. From this screen, after you choose the open work order and click OK, it'll take you to the regular work order header screen where you can enter any of the information then that you received from the service tech. So I'm just going to add an hour meter here and go on and make my work order. And I've got some notes, but I'm not going to add any more at this time, so I'm just going to go ahead and open the work order. What you'll see then is that this call now has a work order open to it. One of the other things I can do as a dispatcher from this screen is if I know that I have a tech on site at a facility that may potentially have PM services due, I can go to the PM button in the dispatch log, and I can look up whether this customer has PMs coming due so that I can have the tech go ahead and complete those services as well while they're on location. In order to do that, when I go into the PM button, you can use different things to look up, either the customer, the zone, or the technician, what they have coming due. In my case, I just want to know what I have coming due for the customer I just set up a service call for. So I'm going to put in that customer ID and click load. My calendar is going to show me that I have PMs due for this customer. When you click on any of the days that show that there's PMs due, it'll show you down in the bottom portion of the screen what trucks are coming due, some more information as far as the customer contact name and phone number, what the equipment ID is, all of the information that you might need as far as sending this person out to do the service call. From this screen, there's a couple of things that you can do. You can skip a PM if necessary. You can assign the PM, reschedule it. But this is also where you can add your PMs to the dispatch program and open work orders for those PMs. So in this example, I know that I have these two PMs due to go along with the service call that I've just set up for the customer. So at this point, I can go ahead and select each one of these PMs, leave the screen marked as open the work order and add to dispatch, and I can go ahead and assign it to my tech that I know that I've got out there on site. So I'm going to go ahead and add this first PM, and I can add this second PM as well. And what that'll do is now it'll open a work order for that PM as well as put it in the dispatch screen. So now when I go back to my dispatch log and refresh it, I can see that now for Arctic Refrigeration, who I just added the service call for, I also have PMs there that are opened up as well. That way the dispatch tech's going to be able to see all of that, and he'll have that additional work to do while he's already on site. One of the other things that a dispatcher can do from this screen, besides adding service calls and opening PM work orders and regular work orders, if in this example, let's say I spoke with this customer, took all their information, and they also wanted to let me know that they wanted to cancel a service call that they had called in prior. If you open up a service call and mark it completed, and there has never been a work order open on it, that's what cancels it from the dispatch screen. So I can go ahead and do that at that time if I know that I need to cancel it. Once the dispatcher has entered the information into the dispatch screens, the techs can now be logged in as a tech from the field service menu, and they can see their dispatches. So I'm going to go ahead and log out as a dispatcher. And I'm going to log in as the tech that I have assigned these calls to. One of the first things you'll notice when you're logged in as a tech is that your menu items at the top of the screen change. Obviously, they don't have the access to all of the accounting and things like that they don't really need. They're going to have a field service menu. There's several options when you click on the field service menu that you can give to each user by their user ID. In other words, if you have some users that only need certain accesses to the field service menu and others that it needs to be different, you can actually assign each option to any individual mechanic. In this case, I'm going to go into field service and dispatch. And what I'm going to see on my screen are, for this particular tech, are all of the calls that are assigned to this 303 tech, plus any calls that have not been assigned yet. There's an environmental variable that lets you show a tech calls that are not assigned, so that while they're out in the field, while they're in a specific zone or area, that they can pick up some extra work. You can also change the settings where a tech only sees the things that have already been assigned to them. Okay, one of the things that I can do when I'm logged in as a tech is I can see all of the different types of items that have been assigned to me by choosing the shop, field, and PM boxes down at the bottom of the screen. If I only have a check mark in my shop work, I'm only going to see shop entries. This works well for mechanics who work both in the shop and out in the field. If they have multiple types of work orders going at one time, this is an easy way for them to sort those out. Same thing with field. I can choose to see only my field work orders, and I can choose to see only my PM work orders. So that's just a simple breakdown of what this tech has out there. If I have them all clicked, obviously I'm going to see everything. While the tech's on site, one of the things that they can do is they can right-click on any given call that's on a specific piece of equipment. When you do that, a couple of things happen. When you right-click on a customer, it's going to show everything for that customer in red. But what it'll also do is, because you've right-clicked on one for a specific unit, you can see other information for that unit. What it does is it highlights with a little red box at the top of each screen where there's information for this particular unit. So at this point, if I know I'm going to be working on Arctic Refrigeration's yard truck, when I right-click on that, I can do a couple of different things here. If I click on current work orders, I will see in red the current work orders that are open for that particular unit. You also see any of the work orders that are open for that customer. Maybe there's a job that you can complete while you're out there, and so that's some good information to have. The other thing I can view are prior dispatches, and this will be prior dispatches for that customer, and in red, again, for that unit. And you can sort on any of the columns in the screen. So if you just want to see everything for that unit next to each other, if you click Unit ID, it'll sort your columns. It'll break it down a little bit easier for you, so now you can see all of those prior dispatches together, side by side. One of the other things you can see in this screen are work order history. So if you're getting ready to work on something and you want to go back and see if there's any history of this same particular repair order in the system, maybe you want to check and make sure that this is not supposed to be a service warranty item because you've already worked at it, things like that. Again, the work order history tab is going to show you everything for that customer and highlight in red everything for that particular unit. Okay, another thing I can see from here is under active rentals. If the active rentals tab is highlighted, that means this customer does have a rental on site. This is good information to have in case they want to maybe check on the the maintenance of the rental unit, checking, make sure, check the hours on it, make sure that it's running good or any of that. They have that the active rentals tab will only show up with a red box if that customer has a rental truck. Okay, one other thing the dispatcher can see from this screen is all of this customer's equipment. So again, if there's any other piece of equipment that the service tech needs to work on at the time that they're out on site, you can see all of their units listed here under customer equipment. Okay, a couple of other things that a field service technician can see or do. If you're set up that you want your field service tech to be able to open PM work orders, things like that, there is a PM button at the bottom of the screen on the field service menu, just as in dispatch, where that tech can come in and say, I want to see all of the PMs that are due for my customers in any given month. So I'm going to put in my Tech 303 and click load, and that's going to show me anything that I have due this month for PMs. Okay, based on your policy of whether the dispatcher opens the PM work orders or the field service techs do themselves, either way that can be done from this screen. They can open work orders to these units and add them to dispatch. In my case, I can see that I've already got a couple of dispatches out there for this customer, but I know that this customer has more units because I looked at his equipment, and I'm going to see if there's any other PMs I can pick up while I'm already out here. So at this time, if I want to go ahead and open work orders and add them to dispatch for the other PMs for this customer, I can go ahead and do that at this time. Okay, once you have once that field service tech has all of his information available as far as what he's going to work on, a couple of the other things that he can go back and look at if he needs to are PM history for this customer or what type of PM schedule that they're on. If I go to PM schedule, I can see each one of this customer's units and when their next due date is. If I go to PM history, I can see what all PM services have happened on this unit, the hour meters, things like that. Again, from all of these screens, whether you're in dispatch log, current work orders, work order history, all of these screens can be sorted by the columns at the top of the screen. So if I'm in there as Tech 303 and I want to only see the work orders that are open for the customer that I'm at, I can sort this by customer and see them all next to each other. And that makes it a little bit easier for viewing. Again, you can sort by unit IDs if you want to see that if there's multiple work orders open to the same unit. All those things can be done from this screen. The tech can also, from this screen, go in to a service call and change the billing reference. So if he wants to say that, I'm here now, I'm on site, he can open that work order, and if you have that set up in your billing reference, say the tech is on site, that also lets the dispatcher view and see that, in fact, they are actually out on site at that time. Okay, so before we go on to entering information on our work orders, I'm going to go ahead and open up the floor for questions at this time. If you have a question, please click the raise your hand button, or you can type it in your questions panel.
Yes. Can you hear me? Hello?
Hear you.
Yes, hi, Paul.
Yeah. I have a couple of questions. Looked like when she was doing this, she was not entering any work order numbers when she was opening.
I have my system set up to system assigns work orders. Some customers assign the work order numbers themselves.
Okay, so we can just go ahead and do that.
Right. You can go ahead and enter if you're if you normally enter a work order number rather than letting the system assign it. You can do all those same things here as well.
Okay, all right. My other question was, when you canceled a call, we know about cancel and hitting completed, but how do you keep it from going to the $ button?
If there's no work order already open, it won't go to the $ button.
Well, if there is a work order open.
If there is a work order open, it's going to go there. I know in my past experience, what I did was, if the work order was open and nothing, was charged to it or anything, and the service call got canceled, I just closed the work order out at $0.
Right, that's what we're doing. So that's the only way to do it, is to go ahead and close and print a invoice, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
If the work order is already open. If it's not open, you can just mark completed and it'll take it off the list altogether.
Okay.
Okay, Chris, go ahead.
In the portion that you just showed there, what I got to think about, when you showed the tech going in and changing the status of the work order or whatever to tech on site, is it possible, or would that be a way to capture a timestamp from, say, the time the call was added to the dispatch log, added to the tech's dispatch field, and that tech then acknowledges that he has received the dispatch and he is on site, and that be a method of capturing our response time to a call?
It's not set up that way at this time. The billing reference, the way it's set up right now, the billing reference is something that can vary from customer to customer. It's a custom setup. It's not capturing a time or anything like that. It's just kind of giving you the information of, where this work order is at in its process. When do you open your work orders? Do you open them at the time that you create the dispatch, or do you not open them until the tech's on site? I don't know if in your situation, are you opening the work orders or are the techs opening the work orders?
We open them. Our dispatcher opens them when the tech is on site.
Yeah, that's basically, more or less your day and time stamp or whatever is it then is the time that the work order gets open.
For some customers, they don't actually open the work order until the tech gets on site, and then they can compare the the initial call date to the work order date and determine the response time at that point.
And because that, and that, could a report be generated basically then because EBS is capturing the date or time a call was added to the dispatch, and then also opened? Could that be an automated report that would do that math and show us what our average response time is?
Well, it wouldn't be an auto. It would just write a report one way or the other to show you that, whether you did it through Self or whatever. But the data would then give.
The data would be there. All right.
I do have a question now that you mentioned it. I probably shouldn't interrupt you with this, but I've been thinking about how to be able to monitor that better, and I just don't really know a real good way to do it, because you don't know that the technician is on site until, you might go in and put the parts and labor on there, but he could maybe have been there and done all of his work before he ever went into that screen. So that's sort of the dilemma we're in.
Right, sure. I mean, there's a handful of things I can think of that cause problems with that. The only reason I'm asking is we have a particular manufacturer that is making response time a larger component of how they're judging us, how they're measuring us, and I'm trying to figure out a better way to report that, capture it, and report it. as accurately as we can. But
Right, well, that's, I understand the dilemma too. Maybe that's just something we need to put on a discussion topic for later, and get everybody's ideas. And we just haven't come up with an accurate way to monitor that yet.
yeah, we haven't either. So
And
all right.
one of the things, this might be a good time to mention for you and for everybody else's benefit, is, after the trainings we send out a survey, and there's a box on there for comments where you can request, that we do training on specific topics and things like that. And that's a good way too, so we can then prepare for a training specifically on things like that. And that might be something, if one customer is interested in that, there's probably more that are as well. So that's a good place to let us know, some of the other things you want some training and things like that on. And of course, you guys can always email me anytime. So thank you for your questions.
Okay, Charlie? Charlie?
I think that takes care of everybody's questions, so I'm going to go ahead and move on. The next thing I want to talk about is, as a tech, all of the things that I can do as far as entering data onto my work orders, entering detail, and getting all that prepared while I'm out on site. When you click on, as a tech, on a work order in the dispatch screen, you can go to the Parts and Labor tab, and in this screen, you have basically everything you need to enter detail to this work order. You can enter labor here, parts, miscellaneous charges, any kind of flat rate data that you're charging for. All of that can be done from this screen, as well as filling in checklists and things like that that need to happen on the work order while the tech's on site. The first thing I want to talk about is how to enter labor through the Parts and Labor screen. When you go into the screen initially, a couple of things you'll see. Based on how you have your users set up, you'll see the work order number and the customer name and any segments that are automatically opened for the type of work order you're in. And we're going to talk a little bit about that again here in a little bit. In my situation, I am going to work on this truck for this oil leak, so that's the segment that I'm going to select. At that time, if it wasn't already there or you need to override it, you can enter an hour meter. You can see that when I selected this work order, it has automatically filled in my unit ID, model, and serial number. The work time field lets you choose whether this is going to be posted as field labor, shop labor, any type of labor that you have set up in your labor pricing controls. It'll allow you to select your labor and so that it can tell the system which labor rate you're charging. I'm going to choose field labor since I'm out on site. And you can enter how much time that you took to do this repair. So I'm going to say it took me 3 hours. Then you can choose whether it's going to be charged as regular, overtime, or premium time. Overtime, with a regular billing, premium time with a regular billing. So again, this depends on how your system, how you're set up at your company. I'm going to leave this as regular time. The next thing that you can do is enter parts to this work order. In my example, I'm going to show you how, as a field tech, maybe I don't know whether I specifically have this part on my van. Maybe this customer has consignment parts that they prefer for me to use. What will happen is, at the top of the screen, if you have this set up, you can have requisition branches that show you whether you're taking these parts off of my van, based on how I'm logged in, from maybe a main branch, or in this case, the customer that I've selected has their own consignment parts, and I can also see this other customer has consignment parts. If I'm not sure whether this customer has this part in their stock or whether I have it on my van, one of the things I can do is go back up to the field service menu to parts locator, and I can enter in the part number that I know that I need to use. And when I go to inventory and leave it on the on-hand option, I can see that I have 55 in this branch, 15 in this branch, 99, none on my van. In this case, this is going to work out for me because branch 2 is the customer that I'm at. That's my consignment branch. And I can see that I do have some in stock. So I am going to go ahead and pull that part from this customer's consignment. So in order to do that, I want to go ahead and select that branch in the rec branch, and that tells the system where the part's coming from. Then you can enter your quantity of parts and the part number, and you'll see it show up down here in the bottom so that you can see what all you're posting as you post it. Maybe I used some other part. If I try to use a part that I don't have on my van, it's going to let me know. And that, again, gives the field service technician a chance to go look and say, hey, do they have any in their consignment part? So these are all just some simple ways to make sure that all of your detail is entered clean, that you're pulling the parts from where you need to, and so on and so forth. Okay, the next thing I'm going to show is where you can, the field service tech can enter their comments. And there's a couple of good things about this screen. It does have a spell check option. So when he enters his comments or she enters her comments, after typing in the comments, if you'll hit check spelling, it will go through your comments one by one, and it's just like any other spell check. It'll give you some options to choose from, or you can actually type, in what you really want to replace it with. In this case, I'm going to correct my misspell there. And once you have entered all of your comments and done your spell check, you'll notice that your spell check button's gone away. That kind of is an indicator for a field service tech that he's done that portion of the work order already. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is the flat rate data. Depending on some of the things that get set up in the control files, those files can make things a little simpler for the field service techs because they'll be able to choose information from lists rather than manually type them in. Also, if you have flat rate controls set up where you charge, specific flat rate dollar amounts for certain types of jobs, then again you're allowing the system to put the detail on the work order rather than relying on the field service tech to do that. If you click into your flat rate control, once you have any of those set up, you can use your F6 search, and he would be able to see any of the options. So if you charge a specific flat rate for, a PM service or maybe a transmission service or however you have your flat rate controls set up, he can select those from that list. Along those lines, and it works the same way, are your component codes, your job codes, and your modifiers. If you click into your component code field, and again do a search, if you've set all these up, these are things that the field service tech can select from, again making his data entry a little more simplified. Same thing with jobs. If you have jobs set up, you can select from those as well. And also modifiers. So any of those items that you set up in the control files can make your work order is a little bit simpler for the field service techs as far as having consistency in how your comments are worded and things like that. In the admin level field service training, we are going to talk about entering and setting up these comp job and modifier codes so that you're comfortable with setting that up as you're working on using the field service system. Okay, one of the other things that they can do from this screen are enter miscellaneous charges. So like in my example, I went out to, do an oil leak. Maybe this customer wants me to clean that up and he doesn't have any floor dry. Other things like maybe you need a specific tool for this job and have to go purchase it. Maybe you have to have a tool machine. Things like that can be done through the miscellaneous charges. Miscellaneous charges, in your system, you'll set up some flat rate miscellaneous pricing. I'm sorry, not flat rate, some miscellaneous pricing codes that will allow you to enter miscellaneous charges here, and that's how the system will know, how to post it all for accounting and things like that. We're going to cover how you can set up those codes and assign those codes in the admin level training, so I definitely suggest you want to attend that for some of that information as well. If you want to enter a part, you can click on the Parts button, enter your quantity, and in my example, I'm going to say I had to go out and purchase some floor dry so I could clean the mess up at the customer location. So I can enter an item ID. I can say maybe my bag of floor dry cost me $3.94. I can put in the description. After you enter the description and hit enter, then it posts that charge down here. And you can see in my case that I have a code set up as FSP, which means Field Service Part. That's how it's going to post to that detail. In that setup is also where we say, what the markup is going to be on any of those items, things like that. Again, this just makes it a simple way for the field service tech to make sure he's getting all of these charges on this work order. If you go to labor, it's kind of handled the same way. You can set up a field service miscellaneous labor charge, and what that'll do is I can go in, again, now I'm going to say, I had a tool break while I was trying to get this drain plug off. Okay, and I'm going to say it cost me $15 to get my tool repaired. And again, what it's going to do is it's going to use the labor code that I have set up for field service labor, and it'll mark it up according to my setup. And maybe I had to go 10 miles to pick up the floor dry and get my tool repaired. You can enter in mileage as well, and what it will do is it will take your miles times the amount that you have set up per mile in your miscellaneous charge code for field service mileage. Once I set up all of this information on the work order, a couple of things that I can do from here. In this example, maybe I want to, I'm going to update my work order information. This is what actually causes all of your detailed posts. When you go to show detail, there's a couple of different things you can see. This will show you for each segment any items that you entered for this work order, again, based on the segment that you have selected. In my case, I only entered information to my segment 0, so that's what I'm seeing. If I set up information in other segments, for example, I'm going to go to my travel segment and just put a comment in, see additional mileage. And if I add that information and click update for that particular segment, then when I go into my show detail, I can see the information in there for that particular segment. So if I had 10 segments on this work order, I could see the segment numbers over here on the left. And what you can do is you can break down what you're looking at by the segment you have selected on the previous screen. If I have all segments checked, I'm going to see everything. If I uncheck, I'm only going to see the segment that I'm in on the prior screen. In this case, I had segment 2 selected because I just added notes to it. Again, if I change this to segment 0 and go to show detail and unclick my all segments, I'm only going to see my segment 0 detail. So that's just a way, again, for them, an easy way for them to look and make sure that they have everything posted that they needed to post to this work order. One of the other things that they can do from the screen are they can complete checklists. The checklists are something that can be set up in your system, and they can be tailored to your company. Maybe if you work off a manufacturer checklist, you can set those up as well. In my case, I'm going to go into the segment that I'm working on to work order checklist. And this is where I can fill in my checklist information for this work. If you double-click on the title at the top of your checkbox selections, it will automatically fill in the answers for that whole segment, marking it based on our choices down here at the bottom. In this case, if you double-click, it's going to put the X in there. That's saying, you know, it's okay, you've already checked it. What you can also do is check each box manually. So I'm going to say, yeah, I checked for oil leaks. I would leave that as an X. Yes, I did. Maybe I made some other repair or did another inspection. However your checklist is set up, you can answer these questions, again, based on the choices down here. When you click the boxes, that's what changes the answer. So you can click it as many times as you need to get the choice that you need down here at the bottom. Also on this screen, you can see all of the notes and parts that were entered broken down by segment. And that, again, makes it easy for the mechanic to look at this checklist, look at the information on the work order, and see whether he is done with the work or not. In this case, I know that I've got everything filled out the way that I want to. If you click the Save Check Status button, which looks like a clipboard down at the bottom, that's going to go ahead and save all the information on this checklist for me. You can do that for any segment necessary. So in this example, had I done a PM service, when I chose PM service segment, I have a button that says PM checklist. Again, these are all things that can be set up, and we'll talk about them in the admin level training. You can assign certain types of checklists to certain trucks and things like that. Again, making it easier for the service tech to do his job without carrying around a whole bunch of checklists. So I'm going to click on PM checklist, and same thing here. I can, you know, either check each box manually, or I can double-click the title at the top and check them all. You can also enter an authorized signature here, so I can say who is it, you know, there at the customer that I can get a signature from on this checklist. So I'm going to go ahead and save that one as well. So at this point, the field service tech is to the point where he's entered all the detail. His work order should basically be ready to go. And if he goes back to the dispatch log screen, a couple of things you can do here. You can open the dispatch up and go to View Work Order and go to Job Summary. And one of the things that that you'll notice with the field service tech screens is that the dollar amounts are turned off. You can have it set up where, you know, you necessarily aren't showing cost and sell prices and things like that based on, again, the way you have the user set up. At this point, he can go to Print Review, and what this is going to show him is a review of what the invoice is going to look like. He can double check and make sure that all of his parts have been posted, maybe, you know, check and see if the pricing is correct. Again, all this depends on how you want to, how much information you want to set up, you know, at the field service level. So as a field service tech, I can say this is ready to go. It's ready to be invoiced. At that time, I can mark this, as a field service tech, I can mark this as completed. And if I'm using the billing references, I can also say, okay, this is ready for review. Meaning that now the biller, dispatcher, whoever's closing your work orders can go and see that this job has been completed and it's ready to be billed. Okay, this is probably a good time for me to stop for any questions. If you have any questions, please raise your hand or type it in the question box, and we'll go from there.
Jermaine?
Oh.
I'm sorry, you're on mute, Jaren. Go ahead.
Okay.
Hi, Karen.
This is Gary. I've got a question about that completed option. We think that when you hit completed, it takes it right to the dollar screen. Is that correct?
Yes.
And when you go view the dollar screen, we believe it does not show you any of the billing references unless we've got it set up wrong.
if you have your billing references set up in your EBS custom forms, when you get to this screen, if you click on a call, at the bottom you'll see a button pop up that says Change Billing Reference, and you can click it there and change it to something else. Maybe you've reviewed it and now you think it's ready to close, and I don't know how you're set up, if you have like a service manager or parts manager, whoever's reviewing the information.
Where's it not showing?
That's we think we probably got a mistake there, so that you're answering our questions. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh.
No, wait.
We got one more question.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay.
Click exit from there. Or
Click
whatever.
exit, okay.
The first screen that opens / completed, what's that do? At the
All
bottom.
this is telling me when I click it, when I'm logged in as this particular tech and I hit open completed, that's telling me that I have marked these work orders as a tech. I have marked them completed, but they have not yet been closed and invoiced. So basically, if I'm in there as this tech and I have access to the dollar screen and all that, my open completed is going to match my dollar screen. Once I close something out of this screen, it's going to take it off of the open completed list because it's no longer open.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
This is good for the field service tech to see that in fact he has, marked all of the work orders completed that he's done with. Okay, it doesn't look like we have any more questions. That was actually the next thing I was going to talk about, was the open completed, and we kind of touched on that a little bit. Again, as a mechanic, once I go in and I complete some work order information and mark it completed, I have the option of clicking the open completed button to show me what all I have marked as completed. That's just a good way for you to know that you're done. Oh, I do have a couple of more questions.
Okay, Shirley?
Looks like we have a question from Charlie. I don't know if you're having trouble hearing or...
Jaron, did you have another question?
What version are you showing this on? The SQL version, I see. What version release?
I'm using 3.3.30. However, everything that's on my screen has been in there since.
Okay. And we have one more question.
Is there a way that you can show, when you are posting labor through the parts labor screen tab, is
Yes.
there a way in the show detail that you can show the date that was posted?
The date that it was posted.
On the labor detail?
Yeah.
I don't think there is right now.
If you go to the show detail down there,
Yeah.
is there a way to get the date posted in there? Like if you have numerous posting entries to show what date and times, breakdown.
We certainly could accommodate that, I believe.
Did you hear that?
We heard it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. Hey, and while we've got you unmuted for us, one other question on the where you enter parts. Like if the parts department wanted to enter a part on a work order and pick a segment, there is no return options. You can't do a return from there.
Well, from this screen,
You put negative
labor screen, they actually can't. If I posted a part,
Which is coming out of your inventory, I'm assuming, correct?
right, based on, again, the rec branch that you selected.
Right.
So earlier, for example, I posted a drain plug, and if I go to my show detail, of course, I can see that. Oops, I went into the wrong work order. I'll just go in here and post another one. Okay, if I put, for example, if I put 2 on here, quantity 2 instead of 1 or whatever, and I put in my part number, and then, you know, I realized that I made a mistake, it was supposed to only be quantity 1, as long as I have posted that part, that particular part number to this work order, then I can do a negative quantity and take it back off.
You have to update the work order first before you do the negative quantity?
You try, and you'll see all it did in that case is it changed my quantity. If you try to take something off that's not been posted, it's going to tell you. I just actually went through testing this, so.
I'm assuming that you're relieving inventory, and this isn't a back order screen, transfer screen, any of that kind of stuff.
Right, right. No back orders or anything like that.
We were thinking about the parts department and the service department. This is really the only screen they got to go to when it comes to a work order, but that's not functionally true.
Only one tech.
Yeah, it's the only one that the field service tech goes to.
Yeah, I'm talking about just at a branch level, not a tech level, but a branch level.
Well, even at a branch level, you can use this screen for most of the things that you need to do.
Except returns and transfers and emergency orders.
Right, right.
So really, the only functionality from a parts department's perspective on this is you're just going to be able to relieve your inventory that you have at that branch. It doesn't do anything else except that.
Well, at that branch or any branches that you have set up for this tech, if this tech is set up with his, you know, his van as a branch and then any consignment branches,
well,
you know,
keep in mind, Kathy, we're not a forklift dealer, so vans and things doesn't play in the same role that we use. So we're in a different kind of an operation. So I'm just kind of trying to figure out the functionality of it from a 15-branch distributor of heavy equipment that doesn't have vans to work from.
Okay.
Okay, you've answered my question.
I have one more. Can the tech, if the tech uses a branch and puts a quantity and part number, is that checking the inventory? Would it tell them if they're not on hand?
Can you repeat that for me?
If you're selling a part that's not on hand, what does it tell you?
What's it going to tell the tech?
Or does it force billing?
It depends. There's a couple of control files that control that. You have the option to say only sell parts that are in your van and don't allow them to go negative. Or you can just say you sell anything that you just got your hands on, whether it's in your inventory or not, and then that will put it to a minus condition in your branch, and then you work your minus condition reports to figure out your discrepancy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, that looks like it.
Okay, I think that's all for the questions. Okay, the next thing we want to talk about is now that my mechanic has, you know, he's gone in and he's completed that work order and said, you know, and now it's ready to be reviewed for billing. So I'm going to log back out as the tech and log back in as the dispatcher or biller. I don't know, you know, again, you might have 2 different people doing those things. So at this point, as the dispatcher, I can log in and go back to Dispatch Central and go to the dispatch log and then go to the $$ screen, and I can see anything that has been marked as completed by the service techs. A couple of things you can do from this screen. You'll notice over on the right-hand side, if you have your billing references set up, you'll be able to view those and see where each work order is in the process. It'll also tell you if there are any checklists that have been completed for any of these work orders. So again, it's telling you where you're at with each of these jobs. My tech, he put in all the information on this work order. He marked it completed. So at this time, I can go into this work order, make sure, in fact, that it's ready to be closed. So I'm going to double-click on that work order. And because I'm logged in, as a dispatcher or biller, I can see the all of the dollar amounts, again, depending on what I have access to. From this screen, if you need to make any changes to the header or any of the segments, you can do that just like you have under the work order close reopen screen. You can view each segment individually if you need to see what's posted to those segments. Maybe you need to add some miscellaneous charges, environmental fees, things like that. I'm going to preview my invoice to make sure that it looks okay. And I can see, in fact, that my tech has posted his labor, posted all of his parts, and I can review the whole bill and make sure the invoice looks like it needs to. And then at this time, I'm going to go in and go ahead and close that work order. So again, the dispatcher can use the dispatch system for all the things they need to do as far as taking the work order from the time the service calls in till the field service tech gets the job completed and I'm ready to close the bill. From this $$ screen, you can also go in and change billing references, take a work order and put it back out into a reopened status, meaning it's back in the dispatch log. If I go into a work order and make any kind of change, like for example in this work order, if I just want to add some miscellaneous charges or something like that, once you go through the work orders and you make changes to them, what it does is it takes it off of this list to let you know that you've already reviewed it. If you click refresh and there are any items that you didn't go ahead and close, it'll pull them back to the screen. That way you know where you're at with each work order. Okay, if I click an item and I say reopen, what that's going to do is it's going to put it back on my dispatch log screen. So at that time, if the field service tech forgot something or anything like that, that's a way to get it back out to the dispatch log so they can continue to make changes. Maybe they thought they had the job complete in one trip, and now they need to go back and fix something else. That's a good way to get that work order back into a dispatch status. Okay, one of the other things I want to show you are some of the other items that are available on the field service menu to the techs. Okay, we talked about the dispatch and everything that you can do in there. We talked a little bit about parts locator. Again, this is where if he's not sure that he has a part on his van, or possibly in the customer's consignment parts, again, he can go into Parts Locator and look it up and see what all branches he has that part on hand in. From the field service menu, he can also do a customer inquiry. So, for example, let's say he's on the road and he needs the customer's phone number, or maybe he doesn't, remember the contact name, and maybe the dispatcher accidentally didn't put it in the call, things like that. He does have a customer inquire. He can't change any information or add any information here, but he can at least view, things like the phone numbers, if he needs email addresses, if this customer has any specific information, in the system, he can go into customer specific and see any notes for any particular department. So it's just a way for him to view customer information as needed. Maybe he needs fax numbers, things like that. If he goes to the field service equipment inquiry, this is one of the things he can do. For example, if I'm on site at a customer that has a rental truck, I may want to see if there are any work orders currently open to that rental truck. Maybe there's something out there that I can finish. You can put in the equipment number and the equipment inquiry, and go to open work orders, and that'll show you if you have any open work orders to that rental truck. Also from the field service menu, there's a labor recap option. This is a good way for a tech to go through and make sure that he has posted all of his labor to all of his work orders. This report can be run for just a specific day or any range of dates. When you enter your dates in, again, you can break this down. I'm going to do the whole month of August. The tech can put in his employee number. If he works in multiple branches, he can, leave that wild carded, or he can put a specific branch in. If your field techs are familiar with the different types of work they're doing as far as internal work or customer work, you can put in a labor class or a labor code. I'm going to let mine default to everything. And you can print either a labor recap report, which is itemized by work order, or something that just shows in total hours billed. After you put that information in and click OK, it's going to run that report in the background. And then he can go to Document Display and open up that report. And then that way he has something he can go on to go through and make sure he's posted all of his time for any given day to the correct work orders. He can make sure, that he's posted as regular, overtime, premium, or however needed to be billed. And this is a good way for him to review what he has entered on any work orders. Okay, one of the other things that can be done from the field service screen is just a work order inquire. Again, this is the same screen that you have through the dispatch screens as well. But if he wants to just, review a work order and see where it's at, he can go in. Maybe he wants to see if it's parts have shipped, things like that or not. You can do a work order inquire from this screen. And they can also do a parts pricing inquiry. So if they're out at a customer, maybe a customer says, hey, I want to buy a couple of filters from you. What would be the charge on a couple of filters, things like that. This is a good way for the field service tech to be able to sell those additional parts. So I'm going to say I'm out at Arctic and he wants to buy a couple of filters. Okay, after you enter the part number, you'll see a couple different things. You'll be able to see if you have any on hand, if there's any ordered in your requisition branch, what bin location they're in, things like that. Down at the bottom, it's going to show you how many you have on hand at any given branch. And on the top, it'll give you a price that excludes or includes tax. So if they're giving a price to the customer, you know that because they've selected this customer in parts, that they're giving the right prices out. I'm going to go on to another part here. So if they're pricing multiple parts, they can just hit next. And again, they can review whether they have the part on their van or in other branches, et cetera, and get prices. So this is just a good way for the techs to be able to sell some additional parts while they're out in the field. One of the other things I wanted to show from this menu is that, and we're going to talk about this in the admin level training, there's a couple of things you can do with the field service techs under their user management. In my example, for my field techs, there may be items that they do or don't have access to. If I don't want them to have access to the pricing inquiry, that's something that I can leave off of their menu. So you can break down what accesses each tech has. In this example, I'm logged in as Tech 303, so I'm seeing all of the dispatches that are logged to me as a tech, but I'm also seeing any dispatches that haven't been assigned yet. That way I can pick up an additional work while I'm out on the road. If you have techs that you don't want to show those unassigned calls to, you can set that up. And for example, if I log in as a different tech, I'm logging in as Tech 324, then as Tech 324, I'm only going to see my dispatches, and I'm not seeing anything that's unassigned because that's how my setup has been done. So that's just a way, again, to break down what the techs do or do not see in their field service menu. And the last thing I wanted to talk about was the document display. The field service techs do have access. They can go into document display. For example, this is where I ran my labor recap report from, viewed it. Depending on what, kind of access you give them, if they need to print out a work order or anything like that, or just, review a work order number, they can do all that from here. And so they do have access on the road to some of the things like that that they need. Next week in the admin training, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about all of the environmental variables that can be set up to make all of the field service items work for you. We'll also talk about some of the control files that you can set up to make the field service menu just that much easier to use for your technicians. So that's something I definitely recommend if you're going to use the field service menu. The admin level is another training that you'll want to attend. I'm going to go ahead and open up the floor again for any questions. Okay, it doesn't look like we have any more questions at this time, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. As always, in this training, you may have noticed I've tried to slow it down just a little bit, to make the training a little bit, slower. Hopefully, you've been able to take notes. We do, read those surveys and take the recommendations from you. And again, we take all of those comments that you put in seriously. We really appreciate it when you fill out those surveys, so you can let us know what kind of trainings you'd like to have, and anything like that we can help you with. Again, we've had requests for me to slow down a little bit. I know I'm a fast talker, so it's kind of been a good thing for me, and I hope that I was able to slow down a little bit in this training for you. We will have the training video. It's recorded, so it'll be available for purchase again. And we will also be sending out more invitations here shortly for some more trainings on scheduled maintenance, setting up a scheduled maintenance, and also running scheduled maintenance through dispatch. So those are some things you may want to attend. Again, next Wednesday at 10 is going to be the admin level field service training, and that's something I definitely recommend for you, especially after sitting through this training. I want to thank you guys all for coming, and like I said, please, we encourage you to fill out your survey when that gets sent to you, and if you have any questions you need to send to me, my email again is callen, C-A-L-L-E-N, @ebs-next.com. Thanks for attending. Have a great day.